Hello everyone, it's PokePhenomenal. This is Andrew.
Hey, it's Mike.
And we're back with part 2 of our Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green Hardcore Nuzlocke Encounter tier list. So last time we made our way to Growlithe and Arcanine, which is where we're going to start today. And we're just going to rank the next few Pokemon based on their usefulness in the Fire Red and Leaf Green Hardcore Nuzlocke, how easy it is to encounter them, and whatever other factors we think are important to talk about. So are you ready to get into it, Mike?
Yep.
Okay, so first we have Growlithe and Arcanine. I had them at low A initially. I just think that they're useful, but I don't think that they hit the S tier necessarily just by being a fire type and a mono fire type. But that was kind of my gut reaction or my gut instinct.
Yeah, I also had them in low A.
In terms of reasoning, they're good, and as the non-Charizard fire type for Kanto, they're good, but in terms of what you're actually using them for, you don't really need them on a lot of teams. I mean, if you started with Charizard, then you're good and you're not going to need the Arcanine. And otherwise, there are not a lot of cases where you need a pure fire type in Kanto, especially if we're looking at the Elite Four. There's really only ever one Pokemon that you would really like a fire type for. So typing wise, it's just not really essential, but it is an easy encounter. It's also helpful for Erica. It has a good moveset. It's obviously got really high stats. So I think it doesn't fall below A, but it's just not in the upper pinnacle of that because it's just so situational and you're kind of making the choice to use an Arcanine rather than being forced to.
Yeah, I think Arcanine, Growlithe and Arcanine are just solid Pokemon. Arcanine has good stats. It's pretty bulky. It's fast. It's it's a good Pokemon to have. But like you said, it's not really necessary, short of being one of the few fire-type Pokemon in the region, you don't really need a fire-type in Kanto, necessarily. So, yeah, its best outing is definitely, against Erica, especially because you can get it right before that fight. And, in Celadon, you can get the Firestone, you can get Flamethrower. So, that kind of, it can trivialize that fight. And other than that, it's just a decent Pokemon to have, but it's not providing a ton of value otherwise.
Yeah, and I think one other thing is its moveset is good, but it's kind of a late bloomer almost in terms of getting that really good moveset. It takes a minute, and up until that point, it's you're kind of stuck with Ember, and it can be a little tough. Oh no, the colors! Yeah, so I think ultimately, it's a really good Pokemon, but it just, there's no reason for it to be top tier, just because of the nature of Kanto and how easy it is to get through it without a fire type.
Alright, so next we have the Poliwag line, and I had them high B.
Yeah, I had them low A, strong B.
Yeah, I think, like most water types, the Poliwag line is a pretty good Pokemon line. They have a good moveset. They have a pretty diverse moveset for a water type. Because obviously you can teach Surf, you can teach Ice Beam, but Poliwhirl can get Hypnosis, and you can teach a Dream Eater. And if you go for the Poliwrath, you get Brick Break and such. So it has a pretty good move pool. And it's also a Stone evolution, so you can get the Poliwrath pretty easily if you need it. And I think just having that utility as a potential fighting type can be useful. If, especially if you don't have something like that, Stab Brick Break can be helpful.
Yeah, and I think as a fighting Pokemon, it's almost better because it's a water type. You're getting a free water type with your fighting type, or vice versa, and that's just really nice because water is king in Kanto. And having this water type that can learn Psychic and Ice Beam, and it can learn Brick Break, and it gets Stab on it, it's just really useful. And it has that good move spread. It's really easy to encounter it once you're in the middle of the late game. It's really easy to guarantee it with a fishing rod or surfing. So it's just incredibly easy to encounter. It's incredibly easy to evolve it because it's a Stone evolution. It just is really versatile, like you said. And I think it's strong enough that it can hang out with the other water types. Even if it's not the best, it's up there with them. So I think it offers a lot just as a versatile pick, depending on what situation you're in the Nuzlocke. Like, getting a Poliwrath is never necessarily a bad idea.
I believe you said you had yours in low A, right?
I had low A as the upper limit, and then maybe a high B. Like, do I think it's better than an Arcanine? Not necessarily. But, like, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, I might still put it in A below Arcanine.
Yeah, I guess the question is, yeah, like, do we think it's above B? Like, I guess Venomoth, like...
Like,
does it have...
Eradicate, a Venomoth. Like, I think
probably.
it's a little more useful than those, like, B tier level Pokemon. So, I think right now I would just put it bottom of A.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. Abracadabra.
Abracadabra. Well, next up is Abracadabra and Alakazam. I don't think it's going to be any secret, Mike, that I have them in S tier.
Well, it might shock you that I also have them in S tier.
Like, this one is a no-brainer. There's not even that much to say. Like, it is a difficult encounter. So that's, like, the one thing against it is that it's not hard to encounter it. It's hard to catch it, right? And, like, so you might have to wait a little bit to get another chance at one. But beyond that, it is also a game corner purchase, and it's not very expensive. So, like, it's still... The game still offers you a lot of opportunities to get an Abra, or to get this line. And then once you do get it, the moment that Abra evolves into a Kadabra, it's the staple of any team that you could possibly have. It's just an incredible Pokemon. It's got a pretty good moveset, and then it has some of the best speed and special attack in the game. So it just becomes this incredible glass cannon special attacker that, like, really can't be beat for what it does. So it's just absolutely incredible and just so powerful for Kanto that, like, I really don't see any way it doesn't go into S tier.
Yeah, like, I agree. It is a difficult encounter to get, but once you get it, like, it's such a powerful Pokemon. Like, Kadabra is so good, and you don't even necessarily need the Alakazam. Like, if you can get it.
Like, Kadabra is so strong on his own.
Yeah. So, like, yeah, there's no reason it shouldn't be S tier.
I mean, realistically, right now, I feel like this is the best we've looked at so far.
Yeah.
Like, I feel pretty safe putting him at top of S right now.
Yeah.
Because, like, yeah, Kadabra itself is an S tier Pokemon. And if you get it as an Alakazam, it's just so strong.
Alright, so next we have the Machop line. And I had them in, like, mid B, like middle of B tier.
Yeah, I had him at a solid B.
I think they're very similar to, like, Mankey. Like, obviously, like, you know, if you can get them a Champ, like, Machamp is obviously a very good Pokemon. It's a third Evo, very powerful. But the fighting type is useful, but it's not always useful. Like, it's very situational. Like, it can be good if you can get them, especially if you can get the Machop in, like, Rock Tunnel. I don't even know. Is that the only place you can get it, I think, right? You know, it's not, like, as abundant as a Mankey, but, like, if you get it, like, it's still, like, you know, a good Pokemon to have in, like, the early game.
Can you get him a Choke in Victory Road?
Now that you mention it, I think you can.
But at that point, it's really only a Lorelei beater, so it really only comes in if you have nothing for Lorelei.
Yeah, like, I think, you know, it's pretty much, like, right with Mankey and Primeape. Like, it's just the best fighting type if you can get them a Champ, but that's about it.
Yeah, like, you get them a Champ and it's incredibly strong, but there's not that much that it can do that nothing else can do. Like, there's not really this niche that it's filling that it has to fill. It's just, like, it's good, but you can probably do better. So, yeah, I think, like, a solid B tier, but do we think it's better than Primeape?
Honestly, I had it below, only just because I think Mankey is more readily available.
And I think that when you get Mankey is more useful.
Yeah, because, like, you're not getting the Machop for Brock.
Right, like, by the time you get the Machop, you're getting ready to fight, like, Sabrina and stuff like that. Like, you're like heading into the second part of the game where you don't really need him for a while. So I would say probably in terms of just raw versatility, maybe somewhere below the birds.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Like, it can go up or down a little bit, but I think that it's around the lower half of B. Okay, next up is Bellsprout and his family. I had them at B tier as well. Maybe a little lower than Oddish.
Yeah, kind of higher B tier, like, yeah, pretty much like where Oddish would be.
The reason for me, like, that I would put it below Oddish is just, like, it's held back by a pretty poor learn set. Like, it doesn't learn a lot, but its stats are okay. Like, its stats aren't bad for what it is. Like, just as this decently strong grass type that you send in. And if you don't have a Bulbasaur and you're playing a game where you get a Bellsprout, like, it's decent. I do just think that, like, the learn set is just kind of an issue. And the stats are a little mediocre, but nothing that you can't work around. Like, it's okay. So yeah, it's filling the same niche as an Oddish, and I feel like it's mostly getting about the same rank as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is basically offering the same thing as Oddish, but it does have a little bit of a worse moveset. But, it is nice to have a grass type in the early game, especially if you don't have Bulbasaur, and, like, getting that Bellsprout can be a godsend against Misty.
Against Misty, against the entirety of Rock Tunnel, there's a lot that it can help you deal with in the early game.
Yeah, so, like, it's good, but I think it's just a little worse than its counterpart in Oddish.
So what are we thinking placement-wise? Like, right below Oddish, maybe a little bit lower. Like, I think it offers enough that, like, it probably, because of what it can do in Rock Tunnel and places like that, it might offer a little bit more than, like, a Butterfree long-term.
Yeah, like, I think I'd be comfortable putting it right next to Oddish, like, even above Vulpix still.
Yeah, I mean, I can say they're counterparts, and they're doing a similar thing, so I'm okay with that.
Okay, so next we have the Tentacool line, and, I had this in, like, a high A tier.
Yeah, I had them in A. Like, they're good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a lot to say other than, they're a very common Pokemon. Like, you can, surf pretty much anywhere and encounter a Tentacool. And, they're offering what you need to from a water type. Like, they have pretty good stats. They're pretty, Tentacruel is pretty bulky, which is nice. Like, having that poison typing can be useful as something, different for a water type encounter. But, I think its greatest strength is the fact that, like, it is pretty much always, like, accessible as a water encounter. Like, it's a decent Pokemon. You can get it pretty much whenever you need it.
Yeah, I think once you have Surf, like, you can just pop over and get a Tentacool if you need it. And, like, I think its biggest strength is, like, it's a perfect backup water type, like, in a way that even something like a Poliwrath isn't quite. Because it's, like, it's just always right there. And, like, no matter what point in the game, as long as you're not in the Elite Four, if you lose a water type, you can run over and get a Tenacruel. And Tenacruel is going to be pretty good. Like you said, it's got a lot of bulk, so it lives pretty well. Its moveset isn't anything crazy, but, like, it gets Surf, it gets Ice Beam, so it has what it needs. So it's just, I know if no one's got me, Tenacruel has got me.
Amen.
So, like, I would put him up in A, like, probably middle of A, maybe below the Raichu. I don't know if he's better than Persian. That's the only thing I'm kind of wondering about.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Persian might offer more overall, like, utility.
I do think the fact that you have Persian for a lot more of the game, too, and, like, situations where it is going to be useful in a place where, like, you don't even have a Tentacool yet.
Yeah.
So I think, like, I'm comfortable with this. I do think it's a little more useful than Arcanine just because it's a water type.
Yeah.
Next, we have a fun one, the Geodude line. So I had this at a strong C, maybe a low B if I was being generous. Like, if I were being generous, maybe a low B, but I was feeling strong C on this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, go ahead. What did you have him at?
No, I actually had them in A.
Oh, wow. Okay. Let me make my case first. So, like, for me, it is a good Pokemon. Like, it's a 3-stager. It's a ground type. It's got pretty good stats. So it's good. But I just feel like it's not fast, right? And like for me, the reason why something like Dugtrio is so great is that it's just incredibly quick and it can get hits in when it needs to before it gets blown up by any water or grass type move. Whereas I feel like Golem and just, by extension Geodude and Graveler, while they're living against a lot of like random like normal or poison types or flying types or whatever you're going to be running into, you're running into just as many things that can kill them in like one hit. And I feel like offensively, the type isn't really suited to the region outside of if it could be firing off like a fast dig or earthquake, and since it can't do that throughout a lot of the game, when you have a guaranteed Diglett and then you could even get like a Sand Slash if you needed to, I feel like it's almost like a vanity pick to have the Golem on the team at that point, And I'm not trying to discount how good Geodude can be right at the beginning if you get it in Mount Moon. It is good. It can help with some Zubats. It can help like survive against random Rattatas that have crazy like Hyper Fangs and everything. But if I'm looking at it in the long term, I think the reason I wouldn't put it in A is just like there are multiple things that do it better, and it's not super useful for the region offensively, and it's slow. So that was kind of pushing me down. Why I had it either top of C or bottom of B.
I think that's fair. Like, and maybe I was overestimating them to put them in A. I could still see them maybe in A. I still think they're like a B tier encounter at the very least. Like, I do think, one is a pretty common encounter. Like, there are multiple caves, like Mount Moon, Rock Tunnel, that you have a chance to get the Geodude. And, like, it is useful, like, in the early game, just having that bulk, that defensive capability. Like, especially, like, against Surge, like, if you don't, for whatever reason, you don't have the Diglett, like, Geodude's probably your next best option. I just think, like, Rock and Ground aren't, like, super amazing types in Kanto, like, especially more Rock. I think Ground is pretty useful, but Rock may not be as useful as a type. But, like, it can be nice to have, because there are, like, a decent amount of flying types you have to fight, and just having, like, that Ground typing is also useful. But, like, I just think, like, for what the Geodude line is of, like, like the sturdy, bulky, like, rock Pokemon, like, it's the best in the game, and, like, you can get it pretty early, and, like, it can just be, like, a pretty good staple on the team. Like, I've never been upset to just, like, have the Graveler at the ready, And, like, hey, there's always, like, the tech self-destruct explosion option if you need it.
Right.
It's like, I just think like it's just an overall pretty good Pokemon.
Yeah, I think maybe I was undervaluing its early game utility a little bit. Like, I was definitely looking at the late game when I was ranking it, but like,
yeah, which is fair.
Encounter, and like it's there for you. So I'm gonna say, like, we cut it in the middle. It's somewhere in B, around here. Do we think it's like better than a Mankey?
I would think so. Is it better than Butterfree? Like, they're both kind of similar. Like, they're both pretty good in, like, the early game.
Right, and like the one thing is that like Butterfree has like compoundized sleep powder.
Yeah, Butterfree has more utility even in the late game.
Right. I think I'd put it below Butterfree.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
At least for now, and it's hard because like it's a great Pokemon. Like, Golem's really good, but Butterfree can save your life in a way that a Golem might not be able to. So like, I think I can jive with it. Place there.
Alright, so next is the Ponyta line. And I had them in low C.
I had them in high C, but I did have them in C.
This Pokemon, it's really harmed by the fact that you get it so late in the game. And, like, at that point, there really isn't that much of a use for a fire type. I don't know, like, what his actual, like, stats are, but I don't feel like it's better than, like, a Ninetales or an Arcanine. So, like, even at that, like, I think there are better fire types you could still have at that point.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest thing is that it's just so inconveniently located for a normal run. Like, yeah, you can get it, but if you are, like, I'm sorry for all of the other bad stuff that's probably happened to you. Like, that you feel like you have to go out of your way to get this Ponyta. And, like, it doesn't have a bad moveset or anything, but yeah, it just doesn't really offer a lot. Like, what are you using a Rapidash for? That, like, you don't have, like, 6 Fearos to deal with, you know? Like, are you really getting a Rapidash for the Jinx? Like, probably not. So, yeah, I just think, like, it doesn't really offer all that much. Like, there's just so few situations I could see where you would need it. So, like, honestly, talking about it like that, I'd probably put it just, like, below Beedrill.
Yeah.
Like, at least Beedrill can carry you through Misty.
Yeah, like they're
And
just
Sabrina. Damn, did we put Beedrill too low?
I don't know. But yeah, there really just isn't anything the Ponyta line is really just offering at that point in the game.
Damn, Mike, I think we put Beedrill too low.
Well,
I'm just realizing you can sweep Misty and Sabrina with a Beedrill.
you can.
And, like, we put it in bottom of C.
What are my notes for Beedrill?
Yeah, what did I put for Beedrill?
I just have Bug beat Psychic. Then why do I have it so low?
I mean, I had low B for Beedrill. I said usable early game for Misty, useful in a pinch against Sabrina, moderate for Elite Four as a last resort is all that I put.
But like now looking at like, is a Beedrill better than a Machamp? Probably.
Like maybe. Like maybe. After some clerical review, we have determined that Beedrill was criminally underrated in its original position. Beedrill, you've been promoted. Next, we have Slowpoke and Slowbro. So, like, this one, I mean, I think it's an S tier. If you're being mean, maybe top of A, but, like, I think it's an S tier. Like, it's Water Psychic. It is very slightly less adaptable than Starmie, just in terms of its moveset, but it's pretty much just as good because it's strong. It's got good bulk. It's really good all around. It's a pretty easy encounter, all things considered. So, it just is kind of like, you know, you can't go wrong with a Water Psychic type in this game. And, like, yeah, it's no Starmie, but, like, it's still so good.
Yeah, like, I had Slowbro in A, but, like, I could definitely see it being an S, because, yeah, it has the same typing as Starmie, it just doesn't have the speed. But, like, it has good bulk, and, like, you can do, like, you know, like, Amnesia strats.
Right, like, if you're determined and you've decided to go with a bulky Water Psychic type, like, Slowbro offers a slightly different niche than Starmie, but it's doing it just as well.
Yeah, but, like, any Pokemon that can run, like, a Surf, Ice Beam, and Psychic, like, it's gonna offer a lot.
Right, like, I think that for now I would probably put it just kind of here in S tier, because I do think that it offers a little more than, like, Charizard, for example. So, like, I think it can sit pretty at the bottom of S right now. Okay, next we have Magnemite, who I have a very special relationship with in this game. In my heart, this is an S tier Pokemon because, you know, he's my boy.
Yeah, I mean, I had him top of A.
Right. So, like, I get it. And, like, the reason I would say, like, you know, he's at the very least top of A. And, like, I would argue that he has the potential to be an S because he is the only Steel type. And he's really good as a pivot. He's obviously never going to be bad as an electric type. Like, he's always a good electric type pick. He's got decent speed. I do think, like, the points against him are when you encounter him, because you have to get him in the power plant. So you can't get him, like, as early as a Voltorb or anything, or a Pikachu. So it takes a little bit longer to get him. So by the time that you're getting him, maybe he's a little bit less useful in terms of pivoting and in terms of being a defensive wall. And his moveset is just kind of, like, okay in this game. Like, the Steel type is just there as a defensive point in his favor. It's not really offering that much otherwise. And his moveset is just kind of, I wouldn't call it mediocre, but it's just okay. So, like, I think that if I'm being totally logical, because of that, I'd probably put him in top of A. But, like, I want to put him in S because he's just so cool. And, you know, he is my son, so.
Yeah, I don't think I could see him in S. Like, he is very good. And, like, I do think, like you said, like, he's the only Steel type. I think he is the best electric type, just because of the Steel typing. Yeah, it gives him a quad weakness to ground, but, you know, the Steel typing adds just so much more defensive options. And, like, yeah, he's just, you know, an overall good Pokemon. Like, he has good speed. He can learn Thunderbolt. He's just a really solid, bulky pick. I just don't know if he's
Listen,
S tier.
I get it. If I'm, you know, if I'm sitting here on the judge's pulpit or whatever, like I guess I'd put him like here, if I'm being like realistic.
Yeah.
But you know, in my heart, he's like somewhere here around Nidoran, like somewhere up there around Nidorina.
Right.
And Nidoking, like in that area in my heart. But like realistically, like does he do as much as a Dugtrio? Maybe not. Like he's a great electric type. But like outside of Lorelei, like, and I mean he helps on Lance too. Like he resists Dragon, which I think is really good. So like if you're taking him on an Elite Four team, like he helps a lot with Lorelei, he helps a lot with Lance, and he's moderately like he's good against your rival. So like you know somewhere like maybe here.
I don't know. I don't know if it is better than Dugtrio.
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I mean, I think
it could. I mean,
it's hard because like, are you thinking about early or late game?
Well, that's the thing because like, I think Dodrio's better. Probably. I don't know. It's tough because like it's definitely better early game. Magnemite's better late game, just with like there's a lot more I think like potential like water fights, and then obviously for the Elite Four it's just much better. It's like what's more valuable?
Right, and they're both good against Sabrina, and like honestly Dugtrio's probably better because it's just so fast. I could keep Dugtrio above him.
Yeah.
Alright, next we have Farfetchd. C tier?
Yeah.
And like I don't think there's much to say. Like there's just really why would you use it? Like you're trading a Spearow for this thing. So like just keep the Fearow, man. Like it doesn't offer anything. It's kind of like, you know, it's a little gimmicky. It's kind of cool to have it. And I guess if I'm judging it like totally like objectively just on the Farfetchd itself, like it's okay, but I still think it's worse than the other flying types. Like its learn set's alright. Its stats are okay, but I still think Fearow and then, you know, especially eventually Dodrio are better. So like why would you have the Farfetchd on the team to begin with?
Yeah, I don't honestly know a ton about Farfetchd because like we've never really used it. But like, I would assume its stats are okay. Like, I think I can learn Swords Dance.
Can it in this game? I don't.
I don't
know.
actually.
I
know.
also have like a kind of a lack of knowledge here.
But like, I think it can, and if it can, like you know, there could be some gimmick strat you could try to go for. But yeah, it's just like by the time you can even get it, like at that point, like I think. You know, flying types aren't really that useful, so like, yeah, why would you trade a Fearow, which is just a better Pokemon for it?
I think, like, I do think it's still better than Ponyta, just because, like, if you do have it on the team for whatever reason, it's going to be doing more, and you're going to have it for longer.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, it's a pretty easy C tier for me.
Alright, so next we have the Dodo line, and I had them, like, in high B tier.
Yeah, I had them as a strong B.
You know, kind of like the opposite of Farfetchd. Like, Dodo is, I think, the best flying type in the game. I think, you know, it's the strongest.
For me, it's like, it's a good Pokemon straight up, and it's got, like, some different niches that it can fulfill. Like, it's pretty much about as useful as a Fearow, but then you get some other fancy options with its moveset. Like, you get, like, Tri-Attack. It's, like, almost a guaranteed encounter. Like, depending on what you do and what other encounters you've got, it's really easy to get it, and then it's just strong. Like, it's a strong flying type. Like, it can be really useful against Bruno in the Elite Four. You can use it against like Sabrina because she's got weak defense. You could use it against Koga if you needed to. I mean, like, it's useful against a lot of people in the late game, and you know, it's never like the best for those people, but it's always good. So like, I would agree. I think it's the strongest flying type in the game.
Yeah, like you said, it is fairly common too, so like there's a good chance you can get it, and like, you know, it could be a backup if you know, lose one of your other flying types. But yeah, just especially, you know, directly compared to like Fearow, which is like, you know, the only other like strong flying type, like it's just a better Pokemon.
I honestly would probably put it somewhere above Oddish.
Yeah.
Like, I think that because of when you get it, it might not be quite as good as Eradicate, and with how its moveset works, but I do think you honestly get more use out of a Dodrio throughout a run than you do out of like your Oddish or like, you know, a Vileplume or a Victory Bell. Especially if we're looking at pure Elite Four potential.
Yeah, I think its stats are just good enough that it's just a good even if like the flying type isn't adding a ton of utility in the later game, it's just such a good Pokemon that like it isn't really bad to have.
Next up, Seal and Dugong. I had them at like a highish B, like maybe mid B, high B.
Yeah, that's where I had them.
Because like, They're good. Like, they're not a bad ice type. Like, ice water is good. They're obviously outperformed by, like, the Lapras, but for example, when we play hardcore Nuzlocke, we don't allow gift Pokemon, so we can't get the Lapras. So, like, in situations like that, you kind of do realize, like, this guy's good too. It gains some utility. Like, let's say that you can't get Ice Beam, like, you can't afford it, or, like, you're not allowing Game Corner TMs or something like that. Like, you also kind of have a nice utility with the Dugong of, like, it naturally learns a pretty good ice move. So, like, it's kind of offering that to you too. Or, like, let's say you lose your Ice Beam user and it's, like, you need a backup. Like, Dugong can come in and kind of help you. And it's pretty easy to get a Dugong as well. So, I think it's a pretty solid encounter.
Yeah, like, I think the fact that it is the water ice type and it's getting stab on ice, like, definitely is a benefit. Especially, yeah, like, in, like, the later game or, like, potentially against Lance, like, you know, it could be a good option.
Okay, so in terms of, like, where in B tier we want to place it,
I don't know, it's kind of tough. Like, I had it above, like, Oddish for me.
yeah, like, it's just really, like, water. It's water, and it gets Ice Beam. Like, it can get Ice Beam, or it gets its own ice move, and, like, it's really good against Lance. It's, like, okay, it's okay in bulk. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I could put this above Oddish.
So next we have the Muck line, and I had them in, like, bottom of B.
Yeah, I had them pretty much, like, bottom third of B, at least.
Yeah, like, it's a pure poison type, and, like, I don't think it offers a lot. I think its biggest thing is that it's, you know, it's pretty bulky. It has some, like, utility with, like, you know, minimize. Like, you could potentially go for, like, minimize, like, double team strats, I guess, and, like, obviously, like, poison, like, going for, like, toxic stall and stuff. So, like, you know, it can do some things. It can be, like, a menace, but I just think, yeah, the poison type just isn't, like, a very, like, offensive capable type, especially, like, you know, in this game, in this gen. So, like, I just think it doesn't offer, like, a whole lot else.
Yeah, I think in this game, by virtue of its typing, it's kind of trying to fill a similar niche to an Arbok, but it doesn't have Intimidate, which drags it down a little bit. And, like, you know, it gets messed up by the ground type. It kind of folds to that immediately, but it is good as, like, a tank in occasional, for, like, an occasional hit, like, here and there, it could be good. And its moveset is, like, super middle ground. It's just, like, nothing that's, like, very impressive. So, like, if I were to place it, like, I would probably be putting it below Arbok personally.
Yeah, I think the lack of Intimidate definitely hurts it.
Like, I might even put it below Wigglytuff, because, like, Wigglytuff can learn Psychic,
True.
which on its own might be worth more than a Muck.
Yeah.
And, like, Wigglytuff is good early game, whereas, like, you're getting Muck later at a point where you're not really going to be using it anyway. So, like, I think Wigglytuff gets a little bit more use in a run, too.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Next is Shelder and Cloyster. I had them at, like, B tier, but I'm going to be honest, I don't think I've ever used one of these things.
Yeah, neither have I really. But I also had it in B.
Like, you know, it's a water ice type, so it gets that immediately. I think the water ice type itself is B tier. At the very least. Like, if you have that and nothing else. It's a stone evo, which is good for it. It's, like, easy to get the evolution. I think it's probably lower than Dugong because, like, it's hitting the same niche, but it's more of a weirdly situational Pokemon. Like, it does get, like, ice spikes, right? So, like, it has an interesting move that has the potential to do a lot of damage, but I do think, like, it dies really easily.
I think it is just, yeah, like, probably a worse Dugong, like, not as bulky. I don't think it's as, I think it's slower. So, like, I think Dugong's just, yeah, serving its role a bit better.
Yeah, so I think this thing obviously is meant to be, like, this physically bulky ice type, but, like, you're not worried about physical moves. Like, that's not so much what you're afraid of. And, like, even then, a Brick Break might just kill you. So, I definitely think it's worse than Dugong. I actually think, like, it's pretty low in B tier. Like, it's okay to, it's easy to get it, but, you know, it's also easy to get plenty of other water types in this game. It's like, I might put it here around Golduck. Like, yeah, if on paper, it's probably better than a few of the Pokemon I'm placing above it, but just in terms of, like, when you're using it in a Nuzlocke, like I think like you're gonna have these other options, and like if you're at a point where you're getting a Shelter, you're probably also able to get those other ones. I don't think there's a lot of cases where like the Shelter and the Cloister are your only options. I think that's like so rare that like you're not really gonna be using this guy a lot.
Alright, so next we have the Ghastly line. And I think we're probably both going to be in agreement that this is S tier.
S tier, baby. You can solo the game with this thing.
Yeah, like, you know, it's just, it has a lot going for, like, first of all, it's like, it's a guaranteed encounter, because, like,
right, like you're getting this thing every time.
Yeah, you can get it in the Pokemon Tower. Haunter itself is pretty good, like, if you get the Gengar. Like, Gengar is just such an incredible Pokemon.
It kind of does it all, like, guaranteed encounter, incredible moveset, great stats. You can take out like most of the Elite Four with this thing on its own, or all of it depending on how you set up its moveset. Like I think literally the only thing that slightly holds it back is that it's a trade evolution and Haunter is not quite as good as Kadabra. But like,
yeah,
you know, it's still like, if you can get the Gengar, like you're sitting pretty. So like, I would probably put it in the number 2 position.
Yeah.
And like for versatility, it's better than Alakazam. So like, I think there's a pretty easy argument to put it above just if you're valuing versatility, but I think for like a normal run, like if you're looking at it as a team member, I think Alakazam is still a little stronger.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it as the number 2. Oh boy.
Oh boy, Mike. Next is Onyx.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't even think we need to say where this guy's going.
Should we make the Onyx tier?
You can't even really see
read
it in there,
but that's fine.
There he is. Like, the thing about Onyx is he's bad. And he doesn't have a lot of anything that redeems him. So, like, there's almost no reason to ever use an Onyx. Like, unless you have him as, like, a pivot in, like, a really narrowly defined portion of the game, like a really small portion of the game, you can pivot into Onyx. His moveset's lacking. He just kind of dies all the time in so many of the fights that you're going to be going against. Like, there was one run where I had an Onyx that helped me, and, like, I think it was just because he had strength, and it's like, that's not even... Like, you didn't earn that, Onyx. That was an exception, not the rule. Like, Onyx just isn't good.
Yeah, like, you know, Steelix was the best thing that ever happened to this Pokemon. Like, you know, I don't have much to say other than, like, I'm sure people have seen the memes and such of, like, you know, Onyx has, like, a worse attack stat than Caterpie. Like, they just, you know, they just did this Pokemon so dirty. Like, there's not much more to say. He's not great.
There's not much more. Like, so, you know, of course, Bruno has 2 of them on his Elite Four team.
Right. Okay, so next we have the Drowsy line. And I had them in A tier. Kind of like mid-A.
Yeah, I had them at solid A. They're just a poor man's Alakazam, so...
Yeah, like, I don't think there's, you know, too much to say about them other than, yeah, they're a bit more common and definitely easier to get than an Abra, so, you know, Psychic is super good in Kanto, and having Stab Psychic is always going to be good, so... And Hypno's pretty bulky, so, like, it's just a solid, useful Pokemon for this region.
Yeah, like, you're never upset to have a Hypno on the team. Like, it's good. It's like decently fast for what it is. Like, it's got pretty good stats. You know, it's a great Psychic user. It's really easy to encounter it. If you really need to, you could even, depending on your rule set, guarantee it when you're on the Sevi Islands. So, like, super useful. Like, great if you don't have an Alakazam, but you need that Psychic type. Like, yeah, it's not as good as an Alakazam. It's not as good as a Starmie, but, like, it's good. And, like, it'll always do what you need it to do in terms of the Psychic type. So, like, I'd put it pretty high in A. Like, you get a Drowsy early enough that, like, once again, I'm kind of thinking, like, this area here.
Yeah, like, is it better than the electric types?
Maybe not. I mean,
I don't know.
You don't fight a ton of water types in Kanto. You fight more poison types than water types, right?
Yeah, but, like, there's water, flying...
Right, I mean, there's Gyarados afoot. I'm not sure, like, is he above Magneton? I do think he's above Pikachu, at least, like Raichu.
Yeah.
Maybe there for now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough with them. It's like,
It's hard because like I don't want to overvalue it too, just because it's psychic. Like,
yeah,
you know, like, yeah, it's incredible because psychic is an amazing type in Gen 1, and like a lot of the region just dies to psychic. So sure, based on that, we could put him higher. But if we're looking at him as like part of a team and like compared to Alakazam, like I don't know, I think here is all right.
yeah. Okay, so next up we have the Crabby line, and you know, I love my boy. I love my Crabby boy, but like I had him in low B, and like I could honestly maybe
I
see.
had him in C.
Yeah, I could see him in C.
Like what are you doing with a Crabby on the team? Like, what happened to you?
Yeah, like, you know, a physical attacker water type before the physical special split just ain't great.
Literally, all it gets is like it's easy to encounter it, but so are all the other water types. And it just
Yeah.
does not give you anything compared to like all the other water types in the game.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's probably better than like a Sea King, right? But like, that's not saying much.
Yeah,
So like,
I think
you can learn Surf and Ice Beams, so, like you're probably above the Sand Slash. But I honestly
Yeah.
think Clefable might be more useful because of the versatility of its moveset.
Yeah, like I can't really argue with that. Like,
I'm sorry, Crabby. So next up, we have our guy, our mascot, our dear friend, Voltorben Electrode. And I mean, I had them in A, like
yeah,
pretty high up there, probably just because they're so fast. But like, you know,
I had them above Pikachu and Raichu for me. Like, you know, it's a common electric encounter.
right? Like it's very very easy to encounter it. Like it's a lot of times you're definitely getting one. It is the fastest in the game. It's got good special attack. It's an early electric type that you can just carry with you as long as you need it. And like it has use throughout the entire game from the moment you get it. Like the moment you get it, you can use it against Zubats, and then you can use it against Gyarados, and you can use it to like start off so many fights against your rival and just deal with the Pidgeot, deal with the Gyarados. So like he becomes a constant companion, and he's just always good, and he remains good until the end of the game. Like how many times have I started off against the rival fight with an Electrode? Like he's always good. So like I would put him above Pikachu and Raichu. I mean like I could make a case for him being better than Magnemite just because he's so fast, but I do think that Mattiton is fast enough that maybe he's like here.
Yeah, like,
Like he's not as strong defensively, but
yeah,
that can kind of hold him back. But like, you know, ideally you're just destroying your enemy before they have a chance to touch you. I mean, he's up there with the best of them.
okay. So next we have the execute line, and I had them like high B.
I had them in low A.
Yeah, like I can see the case for like, you know, I mean, it's a good typing, like grass psychic, like, you know, it has utility with grass, with like sleep powder. Like obviously, like psychic is, you know, a great type in this region. You know, it's strong, like it has good special attack. It's a stone evolution. But like I think you know, the only thing that I think potentially holds it back is like you get it kind of late, and like you can only get it in the Safari Zone. So like you not have the chance to run it a lot. Like when you do get it, like it is good, but like how often is that really?
Right. Like I think it's definitely held back by the fact that it's a moderately tough encounter to get. But like if you do have it, yeah, like it's got a really good typing. Egg Bomb is a good move. It's got pretty good utility, like you said, with Sleep Powder and different things like that. It's kind of bulky, so it can be bulky and like survive some hits that maybe you wouldn't even think it would survive. And you know, Psychic. It's got Psychic. Like it's good. So like yeah, I would probably put it like for me. I do think it's like low A. Like probably like somewhere around here. Like yeah, when you get it in the game is a little tough, like because you're not using it on a ton of stuff, but it's still good. And then like, you know, it can help in the Elite Four pretty well. Like it's got it's got the Psychic type for 2 of the members of the Elite Four, and then being a Grass type isn't so bad. Is it better than a Tenacruel? Maybe. But like I would probably put it below it just because of the fact that like it's a lot harder to get it.
I think yeah, that's a pretty good position for it.
Next up, Cubone and Marowak. I had these guys in C tier because they're just kind of the same exact situation as Sandslash to me.
Yeah, I had also them in C.
They're not really giving you anything that you're not getting 10 times as well from a Dugtrio. And like Golem is better. And it's not even that easy to encounter. Like you can find it. And then you can find it in more than one place, but you're never sacrificing your Pokemon Tower encounter for a Cubone. So you get like, what, the Rock Tunnel Cubone or like a Victory Road Marowak.
Yeah.
So like not even that easy to encounter, and like what's it giving you? Like there's just not a lot of reason to ever use this thing.
Yeah.
Now I do think it's better than Sandslash, but that's on paper, because like you get Sandshrew way earlier.
Yeah.
At a point where he might actually like do some good for your team.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, like you could have the Sandshrew for Surge.
Right. So like I think Cubone gets below Sandslash. Like he's probably above these other three, so he's really just Sandslash but a little later.
Yeah. Okay, so next we have Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee. And I had them in like mid B.
Yeah, I had them B tier. I even could be convinced of a high C depending on who's doing the convincing.
I don't know. They're the fighting type, like we've talked about, like is useful, but it's not always useful. And like by the time you get them, well, I mean you could get them like at the mid game, but like they're still kind of useful. I don't entirely know like how their actual like stats match up. I want to say Hitmonlee's like a bit stronger.
I do think, yeah, I think Hitmonlee is the better of the two.
Yeah, especially even in this gen, like obviously like the elemental punches gives Hitmonchan like a bit more versatility, but like the fact that all those moves are special kind of limits his capability. But yeah, like I just don't think like they're really that good, especially just because like you can get the Mankey, you can get the Machop out in the wild, whereas like with these guys, like they are gift Pokemon you could get, but like you have to go through the fighting dojo to get them, and like is that really worth your time and effort? Probably not. I don't know, like,
right, like
I had them in B, but like I could see them being even lower just because like is it really even worth getting them a lot of the time?
Yeah, like for me, like they're all right, like they're good enough, and they can slot into a team really well, but like when do you need them? So it's like tough. Like I think that these are the type of Pokemon that just they're never really necessary for you in this game. So like if we're talking about raw potential of them, probably bottom of B. If we're talking about actual use in a Nuzlocke, maybe upper C, like top of C. Like I think that that's kind of splitting hairs at that point, but I think either is fine. So like where, like, would we put them above any of these people at the bottom of C? Like, maybe, like up here?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, I didn't,
I mean, like, they're bottom of B, I think. Like,
yeah.
And I think we're being a little generous, so I think they're okay there. Okay. Next is Lickitung. I had this guy in C.
So did I.
And, like, I don't know. Like, he's alright, as a lot of these Pokemon are, but like by the time you're getting a Lickitung, like what are you using it for? What gap is it filling in your team? Like his moveset is just okay. Like he can learn some interesting things, but like so can a Snorlax, so can a lot of other normal types. His stats are like what they are, like they're nothing like crazy. And he's an in-game trade, so you're kind of giving something up to get a mediocre return.
There just really isn't a need to get a Lickitung. Especially like at that point in the game. Yeah, like it has a potentially good moveset as a normal type, but like I think there are definitely much better normal types to be running anyway.
Right, like if I were to place him, I'd probably put him above the Farfetchd.
Yeah.
But like I do think like he's definitely worse than like a Sandshrew, so.
Alright, so next we have the Coughing line. And I had them in bottom of B.
Yeah, I had them in high C, so. But looking at how this is all kind of shaken out, like bottom of B makes sense given that's where Muck is and that's where Arbok is.
Yeah, like I think this thing is basically on par with Muck, and like I think it's decently bulky. Yeah, it doesn't have like an incredible moveset, and like the poison type isn't really offering a whole lot. It might have like the cheeky self-destruct, explosion, but like otherwise it's not really doing too much.
Yeah, like it's right in there with the other poison types, and then I think it's even outperformed by them in most cases. Like maybe it's better than Muck, depending on how you're using it. Like its stats are really nothing great. It's got a pretty iffy learn set. It doesn't really learn a lot. So like it's no Arbok, so like I don't know, like it's down there with Muck. Like they're right there together.
Yeah. Alright, so I think we're gonna end here. I think we got through what we needed to get through, and I think we're gonna do one final video to finish the remaining Pokemon and just sort of finalize our order, get our thoughts in order and see where we want the tier list to end. And I just want to say, thank you guys for watching. I hope you've been enjoying our discussion, and I hope you've been enjoying our videos. We're going to continue making tier list videos, and as well as our Nuzlocke runs, and we hope you stick around. And as always, stay phenomenal.